The Boston Bruins dropped their preseason opener against the Philadelphia Flyers despite strong efforts from the two Jakubs. And Anton Stralman is at training camp on a professional tryout agreement. Going to talk about all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B, as well as take a look around the NHL. I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your day every day. The podcast is available on your favorite podcast app, as well as on YouTube, so please do search up Locked On Boston Bruins, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a thing. On the YouTube, you'll get some bonus immediate reaction content, and you saw that happen over the weekend with the Anton Stralman news, which we'll get to in segment 2 here on today's podcast. You can follow along on social media at Locked NHL Bruins on both Instagram and Twitter. And you can find me, my dad jokes, and hockey tweets at Ian C. McLaren. Excuse me. So the Bruins began their preseason schedule with a loss to the Philadelphia Flyers on Saturday night. I'm not one to read too much into preseason results. I look more at player performance, player deployment, and trying to glean some areas of concern, some areas of encouragement. Obviously, the fact that the Bruins scored only one goal against the Philadelphia Flyers, not great, especially when you consider that the likes of Fabian Lysell, Jack Studnicka, John Beecher, Jake DeBrusk in the lineup, Nick Foligno trying to gain some confidence. None of those guys were able to get on the board. It was Jakub Lauko who was able to put home a rebound in the third period to briefly tie the game at 1 with just about 7 minutes remaining in regulation. He was definitely one of the more encouraging players on the night. A guy who put in a good performance and could challenge for some playing time on the left side up front, although that is a very full position at the moment. Even with Brad Marchand out with injury, you have Jakub Lauko, you have Taylor Hall, Trent Frederick, Nick Foligno vying for playing time on the left side. So Lauko likely destined to be sent back to the AHL, but still a pretty good showing for him on the night. Jim Montgomery was making his Boston Bruins coaching debut. He said he liked the Bruins' push in the third period. They were playing from behind, but he thought they got on top of them, started to generate a lot more ozone time. Up front, it was sloppy, he said, but it was for both teams, and that's what you can expect after 3 days of training camp. If you're a listener of Locked On Boston Bruins, you know that I like to give out a Big Bear of the Night award after every game, and we're going to start that here in the preseason. And the guy who's getting it after this loss to the Flyers is Jakub Zboril. I thought he looked very poised out on the blue line. He played 25 minutes, and that was far and away the highest. Nobody even got over 19 minutes. He had 5 minutes and 16 seconds of power play time, 3 minutes and 6 seconds of penalty kill time, he recorded 2 shots on goal, had 2 blocks, and looked very poised, confident, and aggressive in his first game since a knee injury that removed him from the lineup last season. Montgomery credited both Zboril and Jakub for doing a lot of good things. He liked how the D-corps played. They had some really good moments as well. Zboril was leading the power play, again, killing penalties. He looked like a guy who can enter the top 6 with confidence and with efficacy to begin the season for sure. You know, he's not a young guy anymore per se. He is 25. He looked very good last season before the injury. And I, for one, am fully on the Zboril bandwagon as a guy who can make an impact for the Boston Bruins this season. Where he plays, that's going to be a question to answer, especially in light of the Anton Stralman PTO, which we'll talk about here in a moment. One sad part of the game was that Keith Kincaid's Happy Gilmore mask did not make it through to the end of the game. It's not that it was too good for its home. It was dented or damaged in some way, had to be taken off. Kincaid said it prevented him from making a save on the first Flyers goal, which was scored by Noah Cates at 1:42 of the second period. Hopefully that can be repaired and brought back into game action because it's just very cool. Kincaid made 14 saves on 15 shots for a .933 save percentage. Kyle Kieser made 13 saves on 14 shots for a .929 save percentage. That is your likely starting duo in the AHL once Providence gets going. 2 guys with KK initials. Now, before we talk about the Anton Stralman PTO and what it means for the Bruins blue line, a quick word about Athletic Greens. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Basically all the things. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine to recover. It cost him about $100 a day. He created Athletic Greens after experiencing how difficult it was to create an optimal nutrition routine on your own. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. That's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutrition insurance. All right, let's talk here about Anton Stralman's PTO with the Boston Bruins. That was announced on Saturday as the Bruins got ready for their game against the Philadelphia Flyers. I did just want to mention a couple other players who had strong performances. Vinny Lettieri led the team with 5 shots on goal. Chris Wagner, very aggressive out there. He had 8 hits, as did Nick Foligno. He had 6 hits, 3 shots on goal. So a pretty strong showing for him, leading all Bruins forwards in ice time with 18:02. Jim Montgomery certainly hoping to get him going as well. Fabian Lysell, 2 shots on goal in 14 minutes, 29 seconds of ice time. No points from him, Beecher, Studnicka, Steen, guys looking to make an impression here in the early going. All right, let's talk about Anton Stralman. The 36-year-old signed a PTO with the Boston Bruins on Saturday. What that means is he is at training camp, he's participating, but does not have a guaranteed contract for the coming season. He appeared in 74 games with the Coyotes last season, 8 goals, 15 assists for 23 points. He has appeared in 930 career NHL games with Arizona, Florida, Tampa, the Rangers, Columbus, and Toronto. 63 goals, 230 assists for 293 points. He was originally selected by the Maple Leafs in the 7th round back in 2005, but he made the biggest impact as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning, as well as the New York Rangers. Those teams went to the Stanley Cup final during his time with them. The Rangers in 2014, the Lightning in 2015. Both teams, however, lost in the championship round in those years. He was traded to the Coyotes in kind of a salary dump by the Florida Panthers. He had signed with them in 2019 and was sent to Arizona last year for a 7th round pick in the 2023 draft. He was traded along with a prospect and a 2nd round pick. So clearly a cap shedding move there. Obviously not the greatest season with the Coyotes. They were awful last year. But still has perhaps enough gas in the tank to make an impression here during training camp. He is obviously not known as an offensive presence. He's more of a stay-at-home guy, a guy who can block some shots, kill some penalties. I should add he won a World Championship with Sweden back in 2017. And he, quite honestly, is a guy that the Bruins could definitely use on the right side. I've talked ad nauseum about Boston's depth on the right side and how it is incredibly thin, especially with Charlie McAvoy out to begin the season. You have Brandon Carlo, Connor Clifton, Connor Carrick, who laid a big hit in the game against the Flyers on Saturday, and then one of Mike Riley, Jakub Zboril, shifting from left to right. So it makes sense for the Bruins to add some depth on the right side, especially if they can, say, trade Mike Riley, open up some much-needed cap space, and balance out the left-right of it all. Once everyone's healthy, you could have a top 6 of Lindholm, McAvoy, Grzelcyk, Carlo, Forbort, Zboril perhaps, with Clifton and Stralman as your extras. If you want to go lefty righty, you could have Lindholm, Grzelcyk, Forbort, Zboril on the left side, McAvoy, Carlo, Stralman, Clifton on the right side to get that balance. Stralman did have a career-high 100 blocks last season. He had 99 hits, which was 7 off his career high. Obviously, he spent a lot of time in his own zone playing with the Coyotes. His possession numbers were not fantastic. He had a 38.8 shot attempt differential. For his career, however, he is at 49.8, and his time with Columbus, the Rangers, Lightning, Maple Leafs, all helped to boost those numbers. Florida wasn't as good when he was there. And obviously, the time with Arizona is going to bring those numbers down because of how bad they were last season. So overall, I think it's a pretty savvy move by Don Sweeney. I would expect that fellow Swedes, Hampus Lindholm and Linus Allmark, had something to contribute here to this decision, or to, bringing him in. Probably got into his ear a little bit that this is a good opportunity. It's a great room. The Bruins obviously looking to win this season. It would give him an opportunity to make good on his desire to win a Stanley Cup in a perfect world. So my best guess is that the Bruins are exploring trades still. Mike Riley probably at the top of the list. Matt Grzelcyk could be there as well. Depends on who would get the better return, if any. You don't want to have to throw in picks to sweeten any deals at this point. Perhaps they're looking to get rid of Craig Smith to make some cap space. Again, they need that in order to avoid overages for Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci's contracts, and to make room for Anton Stralman. They can rely on IR with Marchand and McAvoy to begin the season, but you have to make sure that you can fit them in once they are healthy. So it's an interesting development. We'll see if he can get into some preseason action. I believe he was skating on Saturday with fellow Swede Hampus Lindholm in practice. The Bruins did not practice on Sunday. They'll be gathering again here on Monday to resume training camp. And so we'll get a better idea of what the pairings could look like and where he might be projected to play. Coming up in segment 3, we're going to take a look ahead at what's coming this week for the Boston Bruins. But I want to thank you again for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute update on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world with Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Coming up this week, I'm going to have a crossover with the Locked On Sens hosts, and also hoping to have a goalie expert on the podcast as well to break down the Allmark-Swayman pairing and where they stack up in the Atlantic Division. So the Boston Bruins will be back on the ice for practice here on Monday as they get ready for their second preseason game, which is scheduled for Tuesday night at home against the New York Rangers. That game will be on the NHL Network as well as NESN Plus. I believe that there have been some guys sent back to their respective junior teams. If you take a look at the roster for the Bruins on their website, you'll notice Matthew Poitras's name is no longer on there. Jackson Edward, Reed Dick, they have all presumably been sent back to their respective junior teams. Ryan Mast remains there. He's a 6'5", 213-pound right-hand shot who was drafted in 2021, played for the Sarnia Sting. So he's getting a longer look than his other junior counterparts. Of course, Brett Harrison was not at training camp because of an injury suffered with the Oshawa Generals in a game against the Guelph Storm. Speaking of the Guelph Storm, the OHL season begins on Friday. I plan to be in attendance to check out Poitras and what's expected to be a pretty good Guelph team. There will be, of course, more cuts coming up for the Bruins as the week progresses and as they get closer and closer to the opening night roster. They'll play Tuesday, then they'll be off until Saturday when they will play an afternoon game against the Philadelphia Flyers. That game will again be on NESN Plus. So that's what you can expect here coming up for the Boston Bruins in the next few days. Practices, a couple exhibition games this week, some cuts, perhaps a trade or two, and you can get all the latest on the Boston Bruins here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. Again, Jakub Zboril, very impressive in his return from an ACL injury. Very high on him going into the season. And we'll see if there's anybody else who steps up and makes an impression here in the next few days. We'll keep an eye on Anton Stralman and all things Boston Bruins here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I hope you all had a great weekend. We had a busy one with hockey starting, basketball, bunch of family stuff. I'm continuing my Ballers watch on HBO for the first time. House of the Dragon last night was awesome as always. And just very excited to have watched some Bruins hockey on Saturday and for what's to come here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. So keep it locked, follow along, subscribe if you haven't already. We'll talk to you again here tomorrow on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.